So, Danielle, you're one of our rare guests that was born and raised in Kelowna, but you left for 10 years and came back about a year and a half ago.
About a year ago, yeah.
About a year ago. So, tell us a little bit what it was like growing up in Kelowna.
It was amazing. It was, I'm so thankful that I have the opportunity to know what it was like because I left. But growing up with the mountains and skiing and snowboarding in the winter, having the boat and the lake in the summer, it just doesn't compare to anything anywhere, really.
Right.
And the hiking and the waterfalls, it's just a nice life.
Mm-hmm. Has it changed a bunch? I know it has, but I'm curious about your experience, like how much it's changed.
It's changed a lot. I mean, the traffic's always been bad, but the housing and the buildings that are going up and the restaurants that are here now, it's a thriving city here. Right. It's not like this little bumpkin, retirement resort town anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I can hear construction going on outside, in fact, so I'm going to just shut this.
It's a busy neighborhood.
Yeah. A lot of renos happening.
Lots of renos.
Right. So tell us, Danielle, a little bit about what you do. You're a mindset mentor. What is that?
So I coach people on their mindset. I help them understand the blocks that they've created through the experiences in their lives. And I help them change their dialogue to basically support all their goals and dreams rather than being a negative dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Have you been a coach for a long time?
I've been a coach officially for about 9 months, but I've always been coaching people. When I first left here, actually, I was really heavily involved in the leadership program at KSS.
Nice.
And that really got me going. So right before I moved here, I had this website called Motivational Things by a Little Girl with a Big Smile. And I was kind of on my way of coaching people in terms of motivating them.
Right.
But then everyone was like, the internet's not a thing. And it was a thing. So here I am now full circle doing it again.
Nice. So tell us about some of your clients. Like, what are you trying to achieve?
I work with really awesome clients. I'm super grateful. I work with entrepreneurs who are basically trying to get to the next level. They've had success in their business and they're wanting to really leave a legacy, but their fears and their limiting stories are holding them back.
Right.
So I work with people who are really going after some big things that are making big impact.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how does it work? Tell us, like, typical process for a client and you.
So it's 12 weeks long. I find around the 6-week mark, people start to break out of their shell a little bit more, let me in, let their fears really come up inside of them so that we can address them. And then we find out where the root of it came from. It was when they were younger or an outside influence told them something, and it's been concrete in them since. And we just work through it. We see like the truth of it, why they're lying to themselves, why they're holding themselves back from whatever it is they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Is there something in your past or your childhood that made you want to be a coach?
Yeah.
You're like the kid that was giving advice to your friends when you were in grade school?
Yeah. Part of me truly believes that this is like my purpose here. And so I've always been that individual, but I have had life experiences that have amplified that. When I was 15, I thought I wanted to take my life. And so that was my first experience in understanding how powerful our thoughts are in our mind. I actually ended up in the psych ward for 5 days here. And it really offered me an opportunity young age to be like, there's something else going on here in terms of thoughts and how they control us.
Right. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I know it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, but especially young people, they feel like they can't. No one really understands what's going on inside your head, type of thing. How did you avoid that terrible fate? Like, did someone find you in the act, or?
I confronted a teacher at school. Right. My parents had just been going through a divorce, and from the outside, I looked like I was fine, but on the inside, I was hurting a lot. And there was a teacher that noticed something and asked, and I was completely vulnerable, and I said something, and within an hour or two, my mom was picking me up from school, and I was being checked into the hospital.
How did your parents react to that?
I mean, I think at the beginning, it was like, this can't be true. My kid can't be going through this. Like, she's lying. And so it was a lot of like, are you sure that you're serious? And I was like, no, like, yeah, like I really don't feel like I have anything to live for anymore. And she was like, if that's the case, I'm taking you to the hospital. And unfortunately, she didn't have all of the support of my family, but she is strong and bold, and she did it and put me in there and wouldn't leave unless they took me in.
Right.
Yeah.
So this helped.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process. Like, how do you get from kind of a suicidal mind frame to optimistic and not having those thoughts, or at least not so often?
Yeah, the thoughts are always there. I think that's something I would like to put out there, is that they don't go away. It's just that you have tools and developed habits on how to manage those episodes in your life. It doesn't ever go away. I ended up at KSS was the best thing for me, because I got involved in a new group of friends that was really amazing. I had new teachers, so it was new life for me. And what I identified through that journey was I was lacking self-love and self-understanding, which is why I ended up thinking I wanted to end my life. Yeah. So when I was put in a position where I had new, it sparked this new thing for me. But as soon as I left, I really dove into personal development and really understanding where that came from when I was basically 18 years old onwards.
Right. Is there a moment that you can remember where you said to yourself, you're going to make it? Like you're actually very happy to be alive, or was it more of a gradual thing?
It was a gradual thing. Like, the thoughts kept coming up whenever life would throw me challenges, because I also chose to drop out of college at a time where that wasn't a thing, and met with a lot of rejection. So again, those thoughts came up in those moments that I wasn't good enough, when I was told I couldn't have jobs unless I had a degree. So it was for sure a gradual thing. But I mean, even still on this entrepreneur journey, like I said, the thoughts don't go away. They're always there. So then you have to find out why they're there. Where are you lacking in this current time? Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who's younger or older, who's having depressive thoughts?
That it's time to get serious about going inwards and start developing self-love, because it's something that we've never been taught to develop ever in our life. And that's the number one reason why we have a depression and anxiety epidemic going on. Mm-hmm.
Would you encourage them to seek outside help?
Absolutely.
Well?
I would encourage them to call the Canadian Suicidal Helpline. I would encourage them to reach out to any of those centers. There's people there that are loving them and wanting to talk to them, and they're there with no judgment. There's no shame associated, and it's a safe place for them to call.
Right. And I think it's important who they reach out to, because some people are going to give you a little bit of pushback. Maybe they're going to say this can't be real.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you select someone who maybe is experienced with this and someone you trust.
Right? I agree with that to a certain extent. Part of the reason why I don't agree with that is because that shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't have people that are giving pushback saying, like, you can't be thinking those thoughts. Your life is so amazing.
Right. Or snap out of it.
Yeah. That's not real.
Right. Right.
That's not real at all. And so I think everyone should be able to talk to everybody, and there should be no pushback associated. It should be like, okay, you're scared and you are coming to me and I don't know what to do, so I'm going to phone the crisis center myself to get guidance from them, because that's also a resource that's available. So I know how to handle my friend or kid or parent or something.
Right. Yeah. My dad passed away in 1998, but his side of the family has a lot of people with depression, and he couldn't relate to it. His attitude was always like, you need to snap out of it. Yeah. Just snap out of it.
Yeah.
And I guess, should we kind of avoid people like that if we're feeling depressed, or what?
Yes and no, because sometimes if you're in a position where that's all you have, then you don't want to avoid that. But there should never be a position of not having anything. So yeah, in case, don't share that truth with somebody in that matter. Vice versa, pick up the phone and talk to somebody who wants to speak to you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've changed a ton since you were a teenager.
Yeah, lots.
Right. Can you think of some mentors or some books that helped you change your way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot. I've really decided to do that in my life, that if I wasn't going to go the school route, that I needed to have a real world experience in the form of mentors and coaches and personal development. One of the first biggest books was I Am Potential. It's about Patrick Henry Hughes, which is a kid who's disabled, but his dad was determined to give him a normal life, and he kept encouraging his kid to go. And Patrick Henry Hughes became like in the band, and he was in a wheelchair, and his dad was always there pushing him. So it just showed you that, like, and he went on to college to play in the college band. It just showed that you could really do anything, and if someone with a disability could do it, why couldn't you with someone who's completely able? Right. And I read that book when I was 19 years old, and that was really pivotal for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how about some books since then?
Yeah, recent books, I'm a Badass by Jen Sincero is like for sure, right?
I've got the audiobook.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's so good.
She reads the audiobook.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you knew that.
I love audiobooks for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, You're a Badass at Making Money, her other book is really good too.
I haven't got that yet.
It's really good.
Worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it 100% because it's about your money mindset, which a lot of people's is faulty.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to think it's like mathematics. Like if you've got the math correctly, money will just kind of pile up for you.
Yeah.
But it's really about the way you think about money and think about yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you give us a couple tidbits from the book without spoiling it?
For which one?
You're a badass with money.
You're a badass at making money?
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them is that we have self-love for ourselves. So it's like, I love money because I love to be able to volunteer my time and give back philanthropy, like dollar value. I love money because I love to travel the world with my family and friends. You start to create a love around money. And that's so important, right?
Yeah.
Another one would be writing down what your money goals are instead of just saying what they are, because as humans and being a mindset mentor, what you can see, your brain picks up, it starts to want to make it real. So that's a big one. And then having a money affirmations, so affirming what you don't have, but what you want. So, I am a financially abundant, successful woman. Those kind of things will attract money to you because it changes your perception of money.
Right. So true. Affirmations are super powerful. And one of the things I encourage people to do, because when you start affirmations, you'll get resistance. You'll say, well, that's not true, right? I really do suck. So one of the things that's helped me a lot is to say I am becoming.
Yes.
Right? So I'm in the process. I'm taking action. I'm taking steps. And that can always be true as long as you want it to be true. Yeah. So it's a little easier for me than saying, I have tons of money right? Yeah. But I am becoming an expert in money.
Yeah,
I am,
that's great.
Repairing my relationship with money, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting wiser and more money conscious every single day. And it's true.
Yeah.
Right?
It is true.
So it helps. To just say, I'm in the process.
And that's stuff when I say to coach people on dialogue, those are words that supports your ego in a positive way that generate positive emotions and inspired actions versus the limiting words that your ego picks up on and throws you into a negative place.
Right. I think a lot of times we've got self-talk going on, but we're not even aware of it. Is that true?
Absolutely. That's when you put the two together, that's awareness.
Right.
That's when people talk about self-awareness. It's when you're like, that thing I've been thinking is me. So that's when it happens. Because
a lot of times we'll hear our friends say out loud, oh, I'm so clumsy or I'm so stupid, right? But they don't even realize they're saying it. It's just a habit.
Yeah.
So how do you break that habit? So first you have to become aware.
You have to become aware, yeah.
And how do you become aware?
You become aware because there's resistance in some sort of place in your life and it's repetitive in that way. So maybe it's like, I'm always clumsy. And then you're always clumsy all the time. And the next thing you know, you're so frustrated because you're always clumsy. Your inner being is challenging you to look in that area of your life because you're saying like, I'm clumsy, but you're not we're not clumsy beings. We create that in our mind.
Yeah.
And we create those actions. So that's when you check yourself and you're like, I don't like how I'm always clumsy all the time. So then you're like, well, I always say it. So I always am.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's how it is, right?
And a coach like yourself can really help someone to become aware, to see their blind spots.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you put them through like an interview process?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I do it two-part. I do it on a superficial level at the top where they tell me the answers their ego wants to tell me. And I'm like, okay, this is great.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, here's your real survey. And then they'll send me an email and be like, wow, I got a lot deeper on that one. And it's like, yeah, because you're starting to actually listen. You're developing that self-awareness now. Those questions are triggered to get in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about your perfect client. Who is someone that you love to work with?
My perfect client is someone who's ready to level up, someone who's been putting in the personal development or has been trying to get to the next place, but they just can't seem to get there. And they're ready to put in the work. They're ready to dive deep and understand that it's not just me saying, like, write these affirmations and set these goals. It's like, let's really dig deep to when you were a childhood and figure out. And it's deep. Like, it's a lot of traumatic stuff for people. Yeah. And then they start to see how it all works together and how it's been on them for 40 or 50 years. And then they can start to move forward And then it's people who are wanting to really leave a legacy, writing a book, or creating a community-based program or community philanthropy work. Those kind of people are the people that I'm working with that can impact more people.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you ever experience resistance with some of your clients? Like where they're like, you know what? I don't really want to go there. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
It's too painful.
All the time.
And how do you pull them through it?
I start rewording the question differently in a way that doesn't trigger them, because I'm like, oh, that triggered them. They didn't like that. So then I'll say it a different way, and they'll answer it, and then I'll say it again, and they'll be like, that's the same question. I'm like, but let's keep going, and then I'll keep asking them, and then finally they release it themselves. It's not me, and they're like, wow, thanks. You can feel it. Yeah.
Feels like a big relief.
Yeah, it's the weight. It's the concrete wall off your back. It's like, you're like, I can breathe. Thank you. And you've been wanting to put work in that area, but you didn't know you had to go so far back into the root problem. Right. And that's where people get stuck.
Interesting. So do you think that you're very distinct from other coaches in this field? What makes you unique?
I'm owning my authenticity and my truth, and I'm sharing my downfalls and vulnerabilities in the form of helping people realize that I'm just like you. And a lot of people put up the superficial front, and that's just not me. It's never been me. So I share my truth. I'm like, I'm going through this right now. I'm going through a depressive week. This is how I feel. And people relate. They're like, I'm going through the same thing.
Right.
Where a lot of other coaches don't want to share their pitfalls or their downfalls because they're just not ready to own them. They're just not ready.
Right. Yeah. And I think it makes it harder to be an effective coach if you don't own your own, like if people perceive you as perfect, then it's harder to open up. Right?
Exactly.
It's harder to relate.
Yeah. I would love to maybe dive into a little bit around fear and where it comes from for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think when it comes to doing personal work for myself, a lot of times I'm not even conscious of it, but it's fear. It's like that feels a little bit frightening, so I avoid it. And I think we all tend to do that. We avoid confronting things, with social media, television, just getting distracted because we don't want to confront something. Tell us what you know about fear.
Yeah, well, fear is a liar, and it's not real. But fear... So one of the things I did do is I actually started studying under Buddhist monks because I went to Thailand and I was just in love with it. So I started really researching it, and then I found a local monk to help me out a little bit. And one of the things he really told me was that fear is really just an opportunity for your inner being to communicate to you that is the direction you want to go, but you have some contrast in your life. You have some limiting beliefs. You have some stories that are always going to hold you back, which is what is fear. And when fear shows up, it's not meant to make you be afraid. It's meant to challenge you in the areas that you wouldn't naturally go into normally. And so instead of us looking like this fear as a negative thing, it needs to be looked at like a development opportunity for one's being.
Right.
And so as much as you're afraid to do something, we're all afraid. As soon as you push through that fear for anybody, once you get to the other side, you're like, oh, what was I doing? That wasn't a real fear, and you get the result you want. But I really want to help people understand that it's just because another area of your life is out of place, and that's how your inner being, which is that self-awareness again, communicates to you that is the proper direction you want to be going, but in order to get there, you have to clean something up. And that's where people are afraid to go.
Right. So if I have a belief that I'm afraid of public speaking, for example, I need to look at that like it's part of myself that's trying to communicate with myself.
Yeah.
So maybe give us an example. Let's say public speaking. If someone says, I'm really afraid of public speaking, so I'm going to avoid it. But they want to stop avoiding it, right? What kind of message could they be dealing with there Like what might be causing
Yeah, it's a self-love. It's a lack of confidence, believing that they're worthy enough to stand on the stage. Worth is a big thing that's never developed as well as much as self-love. It's pretty much the same thing.
Right.
So if you're trying to public speak and you're afraid, it's not that you're afraid of public speaking. Your inner being is actually ready to because you have the idea to do it.
Right.
It's that your worthiness is not up to the level it needs to be at. So people are like, I'm not confident, I'm not this. No, it's that you don't believe that you're actually worthy to stand on that stage. And that's how all of it's wrapped up. So you have to dive deeper and ask, at what point, who told me in my life that I wasn't worthy enough?
Right.
And the first 3 times you ask yourself, you'll get some like superficial answer because that's how the ego works. The more you ask yourself that answer around between 5 and 7 times, you'll actually get a different response. And that response will be the one you never thought of, and that will be what you need to work on.
Right. So what if you conclude it was a school teacher or a bully at school or your parents even, you realize, holy crap, that's why I'm feeling afraid of this. Then what?
Then you ask the question, do I actually believe this to be true? Now that you've identified where it actually came from, you didn't have that awareness prior to that.
Right.
You ask it, do I believe that to be true?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, because you're like, oh, it wasn't me that actually said it. It was this individual. As a grown adult, you start to see that, right?
Right. And what if there's a part of you that kind of believes it? You're like, yeah, they were right. Because you've got this now for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Carrying this around. How do you get past that?
Questions are where everyone is falling short. We don't ask ourselves enough questions for our inner being to give us an answer, which is what you were saying earlier in terms of the 2 different thoughts that we have.
Right.
We don't question enough of allowing that answer. So it's again of like, okay, so this young kid said this to me when I was younger or bullied me, and this is why I don't feel like I'm worthy enough to be on a stage. Maybe you tried to get on stage when you were like 6 years old and you didn't work out. You had a bad incident. So you keep going through it. Like, how did that person hurt me then? How was I affected by that? In that moment when I was 6 years old, because we clearly still remember, how did I feel then? Right? Oh, I didn't want that feeling again. Okay, but it was instigated by somebody else, an outside influence. So you start to piece it all together and bring more awareness to the whole fear, right? It's not just now fear. It's like, oh crap, this is like deep level fear, and this is why, and this is how he hurt me. And you feel it all again, and then you release it.
I see. So you kind of have to go through it a little bit.
Yes.
And it can be painful.
Yes.
Right? And you feel a sense of relief. But I would say that sometimes I find myself slipping back into old patterns. So I go through, maybe you call it a cleansing process, self-analysis, and I'm like, okay, that's how that happened. That's not true. I know that's not true, right? But my thoughts will tend to drift back to that over time.
Yep.
Maybe if I have a, kind of negative reaction in public, or I'm overtired, and I find myself going back into those thoughts. So what's the process if you find yourself kind of drifting back?
It's the same process. It's basically just journal. Journaling is exactly that. Journaling isn't where you write like Dear Diary and like whatever, right? It's journaling is questions, and that's exactly the process I just put you through would be a normal journal entry.
Right.
So when they come back, it's like, okay, that fear's still here because you didn't find the root problem if it's still coming back.
I see.
And if you found the root problem, it goes away. So if it's coming back, that's an indication for you from your inner being to say, hey, we didn't actually get to the root problem.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it back up again. So you have to go back to the questions.
Right.
And your answers will start to be different until finally you get it. And you'll know, right? Like you will feel it. You'll be like, oh, there, it's gone.
Right.
Yeah, it's because we're energetic human beings. And so negative energy's inside of us, and fear is lots of that. So the more that you can release it as an energy and you're like, oh, that's it. It's energy releasing out of your body. And that's why you feel this sense of relief.
Right. So asking oneself questions through journaling, affirmations, what are some other ways to kind of move through that?
You can writing a letter to whoever that individual was that you've identified, and maybe it's yourself, writing a letter to how you actually would want, because we all have these conversations then of like, oh, I would say this to that kid or that person. Don't have that conversation in your head, because that's where you create this life you don't want to be in. You need to put it on paper and actually write it on paper, because again, it's energy. It flows from your mind through your hand onto the piece of paper.
Right.
And if you want to go one step further, something I learned from the Buddhist monks is you burn it, because then it turns into negative energy actually releasing.
Right.
So it's a pretty powerful tactic, but there's lots of things that people don't do. And affirmations are one of them. Like, they're simple stuff. Making your own meditations are all simple things that people just don't take the time to do, and they're 5 minutes a day.
Right. Tell us, give us an example of a 5-minute meditation. What would you do? Not the whole 5 minutes, but just like an overview of what?
It really depends on what I'm trying to get into. If I want to have a creative thought, like I'm trying to create a new program or a course or something, then I'll put on some classical music and I'll just sit. I'll allow my thoughts to come in, release them, because it gets all the junk out to begin with, and then it'll quiet down. Or I'll use the Calm or Headspace apps, or I have my own pre-recorded ones that I do that are my affirmations over like a Thai music or something, and I'll just play that over and over again.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So if someone wants to find out more about you and your programs, how do they get in touch?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at I am Danielle Grant, on Twitter at Mindset Society, LinkedIn, Danielle Grant, or my website at yourmindsetmentor.com.
That's great. We'll put the links in the show notes.
Perfect.
So that's awesome. And Danielle, who would you like to nominate to come on the show in the future? Someone in Kelowna or who has a connection. So yesterday, for example, Shane Austin told me I need to talk to this guy, Ted Shred, and he's a book author. He's never lived in Kelowna, but he travels here and vacations here all the time because he finds it inspirational.
Yes.
Right? So he's allowed to come on the show because he's connected to Kelowna in some way. So is there anyone off the top of your head in the city or who has a strong connection to the city?
I mean, one person I would like, this is a community-based one, would be Matt August.
Great.
Yeah, Matt August would be one I would nominate.
Tell us a little bit about Matt.
He, the August family owns Mazda Motors, and as well as August Custom, but Matt has personally grown so much as an individual and has done a lot of philanthropy work in the Okanagan as a young, inspiring individual who took over his parents' thriving business and has just turned it into this even better thing. I think is just really inspirational for people to see here in the community.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011, and he always says, yeah, one regret, and that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent, and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time, 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.